We are back live with Less Visible. You know, he is all around the world, been through many things and written about it, straight from the heart. And as I commented the other day, a lot of his columns come across, it hits you in the head like a 2x-feather. That made no sense to me. I don't know. But welcome to the show, Less Visible.
Hi, James. How are you?
Doing all right. Doing good. I'm glad to talk to you. I've actually, in my travels now, I've been able to highlight your articles and have my little Mac speak to me. So it doesn't sound like you, but at least I can get more of the written work, because I do appreciate your audio commentaries when you do them. It's kind of like my little going to church with the sermon, because when I do go to the church, I am getting aggravated with the sermon.
Yeah.
However, your sermons seem to come right in.
Oh, I appreciate that, but there are some that think I'm more Elmer Gantry than Martin Luther, but be that as it may.
Well, I would say at least you are more charismatic. You know, and speaking of this article, I was reading the article that you have on your website, Global Madness is in Full Approach, and I really appreciated it because you had said something that it just struck so close to my heart that I was so happy to hear you say it. I was like, you know, it's not like I'm not the only one, but I felt like there's someone in who, and I'm just going to, if I can stumble through this one little paragraph. Sometimes I lay in my bed at night and I think of the incomprehensible quantity of suffering taking place right at that moment all around the world. It is juxtaposed by an also incomprehensible quantity of mindless pleasure and appetites being exercised. Screams and laughter, echo upon the ethers. I try to visualize it all. I come to the inescapable conclusion that it's out of my hands. I wish it could be otherwise, but I realize that is a foolish thought. I would simply seek to reshape it closer to the heart's desires and, in the process, most likely make considerable mistakes of my own. Some of the greatest murderers in history were social reformers. And I'm like, because that's one of my problems, Les. I want to, you know, I look out in the world, I want to go have fun or do something, and I'm thinking, like, right now, there are people who are starving to death on this planet. I mean, gobs and gobs, and it just hits me. And I'm like, you know, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to handle that.
You know, we have to come to terms with it somehow. And so what I do, as I nearly always do, is I go back to the teachings of the rishis, those great wise souls who existed 5,000 or so years ago in the Indus Valley or wherever it was in India, if that is the Indus Valley. And I look at the concept of karma, and I have to recognize, I may not like it, none of us like it, but I have to recognize that karma is the rule of law here on the manifest plane. We are in the Kali Yuga, which means over the long cycle of the past, it's all being resolved in this period of time. All the tooth and nail and craziness, all the raging hatred, inexplicably so, that makes no sense to us, but all of it has a reason for being, and knowing that, and knowing also that I know that the Almighty God is the most compassionate entity ever, anywhere, I recognize that even with the amount of suffering going on, it's less than what's deserved. And I have to recognize that the Almighty is the greatest power on earth. There is no power except from the Almighty. The evil and the good both take from the Almighty's power. The Almighty allows these things to happen. Why? Yeah, we can bang our heads against the wall all about that all we want to. But as I say also in my schematic of the universe, the devil works for God too. He's an employee. And this is a place we're supposed to be liberating ourselves from, not getting further enmeshed in. And the deeper we get enmeshed in it, due to the power of attraction, the more we suffer. As Buddha said, all life is suffering caused by ignorant desire. And that's how it comes to pass.
No, I appreciate that. I myself have avoided some suffering by detaching from things. I used to if you look into any type of astrology stuff, I got all kinds of Aries in my chart. So I'm the first guy in, and then when I'm in, it's like I look around after I'm in the mess, and then I have to work my way out of it. So I've kind of learned to kind of assess a little bit better, and it's helped a lot.
Yeah, you have an Aryan cast to you. Well, not Aries cast. Or Aryan as well, I suppose. But anyway, did you know that most bikers are Aries?
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. And you have that look to you, kind of, like a guy who would be sitting on a Harley, and you do drive those great big trucks. And so that kind of fits with, your astrological overview.
Actually, if I could, I would have an Indian. I can't move the cameras. It's too much trouble. But I got a poster of 47 Chief on my wall. And then, lo and behold, 2 years ago, Indian motorcycles were bought by Polaris. So now there's a whole new line of Indians out. Very expensive.
Oh,
but
I'll bet.
I've put it into the universal wish list for
If you want to get an old Indian and you want to get it used, go to southern India. They're all over the place there, and there's a motorcycle mechanic on every street, so you can get it all fixed up and then just ship it back. Yeah.
Wow, how about that?
I saw that when I was down there, yeah.
So, okay. Well, so, question. One of the things I like about, and this is just you, so I can say this because I'm not, trying to blow smoke here, but one thing I like about you is you're very honest in your frailties. In fact, you hail them as part of keeping you from being ego and so forth like that. And I like that approach. And whenever you seem to have a go-around with somebody, whether it be internet or media or whatever like that, it seems to be their ego has put them that you should appreciate them. You're a smart guy and involved in understanding spirituality, and you're well-read. And, well, those other people are well-read and smart, and so you should be like hanging out. And instead, when they hang with you, a lot of times you're a mirror to their own, unbeknownst to yourself, you're a mirror to their own troubles, and then they have to kind of make a stand. Do I see myself in this mirror and change, or do I just simply blame you? And I think a lot of those people that you have dealt with blamed you.
Yeah, I've been dealing with this for a while, and part of the reason I deal with it is because I'm controversial. I say all kinds of things. Some of the things I say people don't want to hear, and I have a real problem tolerating fools. I don't go very far with them, and it used to be I would snap at them fairly regularly. That I don't do that so much anymore these days. I'm trying to militate against that. But when you look for the reasons why a person is adversarial to someone like myself, and you explore it and you go a little deeper, you look not only into them, but you look into yourself as well, it's not hard to come up with the reasons for why these people are like they are. Sometimes it's rivalry, sometimes they want to supplant you, sometimes it's jealousy or envy, sometimes they get really offended by what you said, and and sometimes they think you're just on a high horse making all kinds of proclamations. Where do you get off saying these things? Well, that's true. Where do I get off saying these things? My only explanation for all of that is that I've been searching for God my whole life, more so than I've been searching for anything else. It is the one thing that I seek to possess beyond, and to be possessed by, beyond all and everything that there is. And as a result of this, I have been like a miner down in a dark mine. I've been down there with my pick, and I've been cutting and cutting and cutting through the hard coal of my ignorance. And sometimes I've even set that coal on fire when sparks came off of my hammer or my axe. But eventually I broke through to the surface a little bit, and some light has started to come through that hole that I broke through. And that's the really hard crust there at the end. So that's the most difficult part to widen, though I am working on widening it. And what has happened is some light streams in on occasion and impacts upon my intuition and allows me to say certain things that hopefully are in accordance, or still, after the distance it must have to travel, in accordance with the initial impetus that came from that light that is directed at me. Now, this light is directed at everyone on this planet, and everyone on this planet can be in a serving position, and everyone on this planet can be useful in this regard, and everybody on this planet can have communications with the Almighty. They just don't choose to. You know, they don't make the effort. They do not drive and push and bleed, you know, and just hunger, you know, to such a point that it creates a passionate fire that burns through the darkness and the smoke that obscures the truth from us. And this is the effort that I make. And of course, I'm imperfect at it, and I make errors and mistakes, but I'm trying. I'm doing the very best that I can, and it's as much as I've been able to do, you know.
No, I appreciate that. In fact, my training is more in the biblical stuff, but I did it myself. I looked into Greek and Hebrew and said, listen, stopped listening to the churches. But, you know, David was talked about being, you know, a beloved of God, and David sure made a lot of mistakes. But every time David was called on the carpet, though, by God or one of his messengers, boom, right away. Right away, he admitted it, saw it, whatever. And I think that's the main idea, is that you want to get closer to God, and you are open, and when there's mistakes, you admit them. And it's not like they have to, you know, God's got to throw you in a lake of fire in order to pay for it. It's your attitude. So,
well, you know, the thing is, that's not enough for some people. It doesn't matter that you admit to your mistakes. It doesn't matter if you're sorry. It doesn't matter if you apologize for them. It isn't enough. You shouldn't be there in the first place. They don't like it. And a lot of the time it is because it does challenge things within each individual. See, some people are open to hearing certain things. They hear these things and they go, how does this apply to me? How can I profit from it? How can I improve myself according to this, if in fact it is true? Then there are others who go, you're not here to tell me what to do. I know how it is. I mean, I read so-and-so, and I read so-and-so, and, you know, what do you do? I just do not argue with any of it anymore. I come, I state my case, I go away. I come back, I state my case again. I will state my case each and every day on those days when I do it, until such time as I'm not doing it anymore. It's what I'm here for, and it's what I do, and it will happen for as long as I'm here happening for it.
I think a lot of people who hear some of the things that you've worked through, not the least of which am being in prison and nearly for life, I think instead of appreciating how you've went through that, you know, and you had nothing but faith to get you through it, because, you know, you were basically looking at life for extended period anyway. I think a lot of people just, those lessons are kind of lost because they go like, well, you know, I would never be in that position. Like, boom, and then it's, boom, it's done, you know. And I think in the time of this apocalypse, the revealing, I think that what you'll see is people realizing these things that they're doing that are harmful to themselves or others that have been somehow okay or in the background coming forward. And the instant karma, is John Lennon say, is right around the corner. And so I'm how do you say that? I'm not scared. I'm appreciative of the time we're in, and I'm, you know, the old fear and trembling in the Bible. I like that phrase. Not that but I kind of walk wearily, because it's like, you know, I don't want to start creating stuff that's going to come down on me right away.
Well, you know, in that regard, one of the things that I hear in the criticisms that I get is, oh yeah, well, he was in jail and he's in Europe because he can't come back to the U.S. because they're looking for him for this, that, which none of which is true. I actually have no record. I got a pardon from the governor of New York with a problem there, and I was acquitted here. So I actually do not even have a record. And then the other thing that gets brought up is that I take drugs. So I'm a druggie. Well, the fact of the matter is, everybody objecting to that takes drugs too, okay? Alcohol is the worst drug there is, and most of them drink, and especially the ones that are really all worked up about people who get high, is because they are devoted to the thing that brings them low. And if they're not taking that, then they're taking the legitimate pharmaceuticals, which are the most dangerous drugs on the planet. You want to talk dangerous drugs? Legitimate pharmaceuticals are the worst thing you can possibly take. You pretty much, if you have a brain, have to take illegal drugs. And why are they illegal? Because they open your consciousness and they allow you to see what the overlords are doing to you. And this is why they don't want you taking these drugs. They don't want you on LSD or ketamine or these various consciousness expanding substances. Now, of course, the purists who follow the yogic path, they're probably perfectly correct when they say this kind of thing like, well, if you just stick with meditation and yoga, you're going to get there anyway. Okay, that's probably very true. But that, for some reason, isn't the way I was built, okay? I was built to be a psychedelic voyager, and this is what I do. I don't do it anywhere nearly like I used to do it once, but it's still there. You know, I'm searching for the truth. And man, if I have to get on a suicide rocket, or if I have to get like in a really high-performance car, metaphorically speaking, and put my foot to the floor and drive as fast as I possibly can go, then that's what I'm going to do. Okay, because I'm intense about getting there. I have to use every moment in an effort. I mean, how much time do I have? I don't know. You know, and this intensity, as well as the love I feel for the Almighty, this makes up for a multitude of ills, because those who love much are forgiven much.
Yes, that's true. Now, I will say that I think if the hallucinogenics could be actually, like, you know, like if they allowed the science to flourish with shamans and into the system, I think that those can be used to jumpstart or, you know, kind of get through the muck and do, because I myself experimented back in the 70s with LSD, and just from the very few times and very conservative times I've done it, by doing that, you see more of reality, and then even though it goes away, like when it's the 70s is when I did this, my view of the world in reality is wider because of that. So just think, if we could actually have people who could help in this society as you know, shaman physicians of the mind to do that kind of spiritual mind, it would be a good thing. Unfortunately, of course, you can abuse it. You can, you know, because it's illegal and there's various quantities and all this other stuff. There's a lot of trouble with it, but you know, and that's because of our societies not looking at it as a viable help for anything.
Well, you know, there very definitely are people who should not take consciousness expanding drugs. It's just not in their wheelhouse. They're not going to expand their consciousness. It's going to freak them out. But they're the sort of people that are generally inhibited from attempting it in the first place, although not all the time. But there are some of us who are meant to make quantum leaps in consciousness. And as I said, yeah, not for everyone, but each of us are special cases. Now, if I'm taking these consciousness expanding drugs and I'm taking all my clothes off and running down Main Street, if I'm weenie wagging at Brownie Scouts somewhere, if I'm doing any number of what one might say socially undesirable behavior, well then, okay, I can see where the problem is. But I'm not. I'm sitting in isolation all by myself, and I am using this item as a vehicle. Call it an invisible stairway that I can walk up levels of consciousness with. Call it invisible portals, which I can look into and see luminous beings in. Call it a resounding board that suddenly makes it possible for me to hear things I can't hear other times. Because I assure you that when I get into these elevated states, I can hear voices speaking to me in crystal clarity. One particular voice, of course. And it tells me stuff that has to be true. It goes counter to nothing that all of the good people have said over the past. And I have yet to find it has been proven wrong in my experience. So I trust in it and I follow with this. And I'm going to use whatever vehicle I can to get there. And I use meditation as well, and I use chanting sometimes. I certainly use prayer on a regular basis. And all of these things are part and parcel of it. If I was taking these things and I was going down into the low country, or I was taking them and I was using them to manipulate the minds of other people for my own profit, or if I was taking these things because I was indulging in the flesh palaces and all sorts of arcane hedonistic pursuits, all right. Well, okay, then there might be some position where one might object to it. But even there, intention is what counts.
Yeah, I think one can work themselves up into a religious fervor, and I mean in the proper sense of the word, through whirling dervish and all this, meditations. You could see nature. What's that? Vision quests. You can do all these things, and I think that they're all physically inducing a spiritual connection, which would also include herbs and whatnot. So, I mean, I think it's all just a big problem. And, you're right, though, the powers that be know these things are dangerous to their hold. So, and plus, the United States
they're all alcoholics.
That's why the United States makes a bundle on both selling drugs and arresting people for them. So it's like they can have their cake and eat it too.
And then housing them, okay? That's what the whole private prison industry came about. Did you ever see that article? I don't know if you did. Very few people have seen it. It was about a meeting that took place in the 80s in Los Angeles, I believe. There were a bunch of record company execs there, and there were a lot of investors, people who were looking to create the private prison industry. And it is said that they determined that rap music, especially the gangster rap and all, basically the stuff we have to listen to these days, was designed in order to create more and more fodder for the prisons, to motivate people into criminal behavior that would cause them to be arrested and then housed in the private prison complexes.
Well, I just did, while you were doing this, I'm going to go to this commercial rap, A Pipeline to Prison. And there's articles talking about these things that you were mentioning. And that was just a secret meeting that changed rap music and destroyed a generation. There's a link to that and so forth.
Yeah, so, that's it. That's the one.
Okay. I'm putting it up here in the video for people they can look at a later date. So.
But anyway, that kind of stuff, it makes perfect sense to me, because what other justification is there for this horrendous thing that tries to pass off as a musical vehicle, and that's all about bling and booty and killing? I'm sure there are some exceptions to it. I heard once or twice a few good things. I liked Arrested Development back in the day, here and there. But these days, mostly all I hear is like intense pornographia and just a lot of bad words. Not to say that I don't use bad words on occasion, but not all the time. It's, if I'm around if rap music comes on, I literally have to run away. I turn and go flying. I don't know I don't even think about it.
Well, I think it's hypnotic. I mean, I get the same thing when I'm watching. I don't watch TV. Lucinda is with me. She watches the TV, but I've been showing her stuff about it. But I'll watch the TV and I'll sit. It's like in the movie Matrix. When you're in the Matrix, you see everything like we are. But when you're looking at it on a screen, you see all the characters flowing down, right? So when I watch the news, I'm seeing all the programming that they're coming out, and they talk about a story for a reason, and the reason is not the story. It's what they can evoke underneath it, and so on. So whenever I hear a news story, first thing I go is, okay, so like, why are they saying this? What's the deal?
Yeah.
And look at the stuff that's going on with Bruce Jenner. I mean, everywhere I turn, it's Bruce Jenner. I mean, the guy, let's just take it at face value. The guy changed into a woman. Big deal. I mean, why is that a story? I don't get it. And, and not to mention
because they are pushing this agenda of sexual aberrance into the mainstream. If you read today's Petri dish, the one I wrote, I put a bunch of links in there where I mention in the UK, they are making 3-year-olds in nursery school sign statements saying they won't use transphobic language. There are children 5 and 6 years old being prepared for sexual reassignment. This is being pushed globally, and it's all part. See, let me put it this way. The entire universe is a sexual act, okay? It's all sex. When you put a plug into a socket, it's sex, okay? And the power can be converted in so many different ways, into fire, into ice, air conditioners, freezers, and electrical heat, whatever you want to call it. But this sexual force, okay, it begins at one point and it moves up from the animal to the human to the spiritual, okay? It's sex on every single level. And there's a natural dynamic to the way that sex is performed and what it is. If they can subvert that, they can change the entire culture, okay? And they can put the entire culture under a certain rulership of action, intention, and direction so that it no longer reflects the basic. This is why they're trying to destroy the families, okay? Now, why they're, because this family unit is the basic building block of civilization. If you destroy the family unit, you have brought chaos into being. Most all these people are Satanists. What do they worship? They worship chaos and division, okay? This is what they do. And now I don't want to say that, being gay or having certain kind of arcane taste sexually is good or bad. To me, it's a personal stage people go through, okay? It's something you go through in a certain life. And I got no one way or another to say about that. I wouldn't judge it, and I don't judge it, regardless of what some people may think. What I judge is when it's used for a political agenda, when it's forced down your throat, pun intended, when it's, when it's used as a vehicle for mind programming, because when you can pervert people in the first three chakras, and that's the second chakra, when you can pervert people at that level, you can control them. And how do they control people most of the time? Two ways: guilt and fear. And that is why alcohol is the general palliative everywhere, because alcohol will not only amplify your guilt and fear, but it'll also put them aside so you don't think about it when you commit even worse actions, okay? And that's why it is the drug of choice within the police state mind. And they use that. And also, when is one more likely to engage in all kinds of unusual sexual escapades, except when one is drunk out of their mind?
That's true. We're going to stop for just a quick break here, but I've heard it talked about when he did the stats, people aren't arrested for toking and driving. There isn't any of the crime associated with that. It's with alcohol. Yeah. But hold on, we're going to take a second, and we'll be right back talking with Less Visible live on Feet to the Fire.
Hiding, you can see him.
Less Visible is here live from Hawaii. I must have listened to that song 1,000 times, Les. I love it. You do have on your website, we have so many of them, but if you go to lessvisible.com, that could be like a way to kind of jump off to everything else. You have books and a bunch of CDs there for sale for those who may hearing this for the first time. You're quite a creative character. You got all kinds of goodies up there.
Well, I can't take any credit for that myself, but here is what I tell everybody who sometimes brings it to my attention or might even say something like, I wish I could do what you do. And I say, there's no problem. You absolutely can. Seek God. Seek God, and he will open the treasure house to you. And if you are seeking to be employed by the master, well, don't you think that the master will, while putting you through a whole lot of difficulty in arriving at it, don't you think he will give you certain talents to exercise to win the hearts of others? Well, I think, yes, indeed, the Almighty would do that.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I've been, again, when I listen to your stuff, what it does is stuff triggers unrelated. Like I'll hear you talking, and sometimes that's why I like having the audio file, because I re-listen to it. I'll hear you talking, and I'll hear something, and all of a sudden I'll phase out what you're talking about, and I start to go off on this tangent, and then I, will think of something, or I'll have an idea and then I'll come back and go like, oh, wait a minute, and I got to go back again. But I think there's stuff encoded in that will send you one off in a direction that can bring you some type of answers or illumination of a problem.
Well, once again, all praise to the Almighty. I must tell you, and everyone can develop talents of their own. We have them hidden in us. Within so many people, these talents have not been activated yet because it takes a certain act to activate them. But once they were activated, they will flow through you. And you do that by seeking that light within, because that light within is the thing that activates the abilities within you. And then you're good to go. And everyone has talents. There's such a huge bounty of talents invested in all of us. We are God's bank. God is our bank. We are God's bank. So you go to God and you say, look, please give me a loan from your bank. And how do you repay it? And what is the interest that is appended to it? Your efforts, the work that you do. This is how you repay the loan that you got from the spiritual bank.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. I think in these times now, people are focusing on the material preparations for what you have been calling the apocalypse, and others have. I mean, the apocalypse really the revealing. I mean, the word apocalypse means like, oh, it's going to be Armageddon. Well, it just means revealing. Now, and that's going to be Armageddonic for some people, but
Yes.
but a lot of people are preparing for this time materially. They're having food, shelter.
Preppers.
Yeah, preppers, etc. No, I'm not saying anything wrong with that, but it seems to me that in my case, when I try to prepare, it's like it gets elusive, you know?
Yeah. I hear you.
And I kind of look at that as God saying, no, you know, either don't worry about it now or the time will come or whatever. And I'm trying to learn that discussion. I'm trying to learn that, okay, here's what I'd like to do. I start to work at it, and it kind of just doesn't happen, and I feel like I'm punching underwater, you know, and I go, is that like the kind of a way people are getting told, you know, either no or not yet, and
look at what does it say in the Bible? Consider the lilies of the valley. They neither spin nor do they toil, yet Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed as these. In other words, the Almighty takes care of you. You don't have to prepare in that sense, but of course, common sense will tell you certain things. I've got some excess rice around. I have a certain amount that'll get me through a few weeks if necessary. Okay, but this other thing, look, you can't protect yourself against what you don't know. It just doesn't work like that. Okay, so here you are one day on a street corner, completely obsessed with worrying about all these different things or how you're going to get ready. You walk across the street and get hit by a truck because you're not paying attention to where you are in the moment. Okay. If indeed you're supposed to be sent somewhere, if indeed you are supposed to gather together with some others, huddle together for survival, or however that goes about, you will be told if you are moving in the direction of the one who is in a position to tell you. All true and real information comes from the luminous spheres. You must approach the luminous spheres. Once you do, this information will be made available to you. If you're running around out here, I mean, how many times are all of these experts wrong? I read these economic pundits every other day. Everything they say is going to happen doesn't happen, you know? And all of these people that are threatening that this is going to happen and that is going to happen. Yeah, we see the looming potential and possibility of these things, but we've yet to see these things.
Right.
Except in limited ways.
I think what is happening is I've come up with a thing where everybody has their paradigm. So what's coming is something that has no reference point or in history, at least in a very long history.
That's for sure.
So
on that.
We have that coming, and so we're picking it up. I mean, people who are in tune or not, we're picking it up, but we can only express it within our paradigm. So you have people talking about Planet X. You have people talking about the dollar, the banks and all that collapsing. You have solar flares. You have aliens, whether it be Project Bluebeam or really. You have the return of Christ. You have all these various things within one's paradigm to try and put a finger on what's coming. But it's not. But it's not it. So you're like, yeah, but no. Every time you try to explain it.
Yeah, you know, we're limited, and we have to understand that. We live in a world of glass darkly. We live in a world of glass darkly. We don't know. And this is why whenever you see the wise, and all of us have encountered someone who is wise, or we are fans of certain people who were here once but don't seem to be here any longer, the one thing infallibly that we notice about every one of them is they are genuinely humble. And if you are humble, you have put yourself in the way of grace. And the more humble you become, which this leads directly to becoming like a little child, who are the only ones that are able to enter the kingdom of heaven, when you put yourself in this state, you're going to be guided. I'm telling you, and especially in a time of apocalypse. I mean, of all the times when the angels of the light are going to be there looking where they might help, who they might assist, who they might inform, who they might educate. Never is there a time, and it's the same with the demons, okay? And the people are getting the information that they seek according to the argument they need to make to justify what it is that they pursue in this world. And some people are pursuing the things of the world, so they're taking the arguments that work in order to inform and educate them how to do that. Some are seeking for the spiritual realms, and they are receiving the information that goes in that way. And both of these things are happening simultaneously on this planet at the same time. This is the time of the great harvesting, of the summing up. And these wars going on, and the wars of commerce as well, and the wars of information, all the rest of that, it's all a spiritual war. It's all a war for souls.
I think the funny part about it is once we go through this and look back at time, people are going to go, you mean that's all I had to do? But at the time, looking forward and having faith in the ineffable and the invisible inevitable, you have this forward, you go, it's hard. But in retrospect, it's going to be like, oh, that's all I had to do? So I'm trying to do all of this in real time, so I'm living in my own triggers and fears that come from whatever happened to me in life. So I'm doing it all kind of in real time. And I think that's how it all works, though. It's like if we went to school between kindergarten and our master's degree all simultaneously, rather than one grade at a time. That's how I think kind of life works.
Okay, look at the life of Jesus Christ. Look at the life of Gautama Buddha. Look at the life of Lao Tzu. Look at the life of Paramahansa Yogananda, or any number of these different individuals who definitely reflected the light and beauty of the Almighty. They lived simply. They all lived simply. They did not worry themselves about what's going on next week, about what happened last week. They are focused purely upon that which they know is forever, the endless. It is more real than we are. It surrounds us. It permeates us. It fills time and space. We have only to associate ourselves with that, and all the rest of these details are taken care of. And I have been reminded so many times lately, and I have come across this reference, that before I even ask for something, the Almighty knows what I need and don't need, and has already taken steps to provide it for me. And yet I, or anyone, in their anxiety to achieve or to acquire any particular thing, actually block the sunlight in terms of its arrival. And that's why you got to just give it up. I mean, how many different ways have I heard from all these teachers? Take all your problems, all your sorrows, all your hang-ups and everything, and put them in a bag and throw it in the ocean.
Yeah, I think that we are our most influential, we are our biggest influence on our condition. We have
We're our worst enemy.
Which is, the good news is, what we do will affect our lives more than anybody else. The bad news is we're blaming all our effects on everyone else. So, if,
That's well put.
if they would just stop doing this, I would be okay. And right now,
I have learned that much. I have learned that when something goes bad, I go, now what did I do? That's the first thing I say.
I'm dealing with this stuff at work because I don't want to take up the time with the whole story about how I came into this truck and everything. Well, I mean, it just worked out. Like I literally woke up one day from sleeping, got out of bed, and I went, I'm going to have to buy a truck. That day, I had a truck. I mean, I was like, by the afternoon, I had a truck. I'm like, wait a minute. And knowing me, I would have to think about it and analyze it and check this and check that. But it was all stacked up like this, so that I just walked through, all boom, and there it was. And, others did it too, but how I got this, and for the cost, and how the guy, he had it, I knew him, he took care of it, all this stuff was like, phew. And I think, that's how it's supposed to go. And it was kind of an example for me to look forward in other areas. Okay, here's the deal, and then kind of look for things to start forming, and that's what I've been trying to do. It's kind of like I learned from example. It took me, I'm 58, it took me a long time to do this because I spent most of my life beating myself and,
Look at it like this. Look at some very, very old people. One thing you notice about them, they're resigned. They've come to terms one way or another, or they have not, and so they are just a combination of tics and neuroses or psychoses that have completely taken over their vehicle. But for those who have lived through enough of life's blows and storms and the rest of it, there's a certain resignation and surrender you see about them. which is a lesson that should be learned by those much younger. Let me get there ahead of time. Let me get there before it is put upon me, okay? Let me seek it before it puts me through these, horned-handed changes, that, and the requisite, and the amount of pain that comes with it.
Does this sound reasonable? There seems to be times in your life, picture it as two, like, merry-go-rounds going, all right? At certain times in your life, these things line up, and it's time to, like, walk off one onto the next. And let's just assume that karmically you're supposed to learn something from the merry-go-round. I'm not looking at it as a negative thing. What I find is if you're not paying attention, you'll miss that walk-off, and it gets messier. And then if you just simply don't pay attention and just walk out intent altogether, you may end up on another merry-go-round that's not even part of the deal, so you have to cycle away back down to the other way. I mean, does that sound like a good metaphor?
Yeah, I can see that. I can also see those two merry-go-reels interfacing like gears, but at the same and only becoming visible at certain points. But however, once again, I mean, I bring everything back to this same point. If there is any question, if there is anything you are uncertain about, if there's anything that's confusing you, if there's anything you haven't gotten an answer from before, lay it in the hands of the Almighty, and with great confidence and faith, know that an answer will come to you in respect of it. It may not come today, it may not come tomorrow, but come it certainly shall, because this is how the universe operates. We don't live in a vacuum. And every thought that you put out, if you have the direction of the intention in which you are putting it, well, that's going to vibrate the answer into being. It's part of the metaphysical dynamics of existence. There are laws, there are rules, and they're infallible, and they're always in operation.
So I guess to put it away, that no answer means either no or not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, or I'm not listening. But assuming I am, assuming I'm generous, because I said this prayer to God once. I said, God, I give you permission to break my legs in order to get, my attention. But I'm also hoping that you're pretty clever, that you won't have to. But I'm admitting, I want to know your input, and if it takes being broken, I'd rather have that than walk off into the darkness, let's say, and miss it. So, I mean, it sounds...
Oh, my God, yes.
It sounds real laudable, like, oh, that sounds like you. But, I mean, I've been broken, and I look back at that, and I go, yep, there was no other way at that point other than have it smash on me, because it was totally blind. And I am thankful in the long run, though it was quite painful.
I was in my place in Eastern Europe, and I was renovating this great big loft, and I was doing pretty well with it. It was really coming along, and but as it turned out, and I started increasingly to become aware of it, the person whose land and property I was living on was a psychopath. And I recognized at a certain point that this was not going to get together in time for winter coming, and that this person was not an individual that I should be interacting with in any case. So I was standing there in this place, and I went, God, Lord, get me out of here! And I said it 3 or 4 times very strongly. And the next thing I knew, I had fallen from a height from the loft up in the where I slept, and I had broken my hip and smashed up my face. Now you can look at that and go, well, geez, that's a little extreme, isn't it? But what happened was, and I went through the rehab and everything, and I got put together, and of course it has affected my walking, and I've had to make all kinds of adaptations to some of the training I used to do with my body. But at the same time, it was also there to put me into a certain headspace where I begin to comprehend that I'm not 18 anymore, okay? And that was another lesson that had to come through. I have to gracefully accept the stages of aging. I can't be a perpetual youth and a Peter Pan. I mean, because I've been running around acting like I'm 18 years old. And the fact of the matter is I am not.
Yeah, let's use that example in Europe as like a something to look into. All right, argument could be made by somebody. They'd say, well, if God really was doing this wonderful person to lead you and all that, it seems like he would lead you to the psychopath's house, you fall off a ladder, nearly die and all this stuff. Isn't there like an easier way? I mean, if God is so great and wonderful, you know, so how would one deal with that?
Well, look, we learn lessons a lot of different ways, okay? And what the real and total meaning of all of that was, I wouldn't begin to guess. I don't know, but I don't second guess God. All I know is it happened right after I was crying out to be let go, okay, to be taken out of there. And it happened. And now look where I find myself. Now, I could have been here before I ever went to that place where that psychopath was, okay, because I was trying to get here back then before I went there. That was the fail-safe choice that I wound up with because I couldn't find somewhere to land here. I had to wait until that happened before the next time. Then all of a sudden, boom, 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 the opportunities came up, and bang, 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 I was here. Why did I have to go through all of that? For the purpose of demonstration. If not for everyone else, certainly for myself. And it has slowed me down. It has made me more thoughtful. It has certainly made me more wary of the sort of reckless abandon with which I have approached life, for some length of time. I'm a changed person. I am not the person I was before that happened. And I would say that's to the good as well.
I would say that it does take faith, and I would say guts, to say, like, I'm going to move from into another country or across the world, and an individual who I'm not knowing that well is going to be some type of facilitator for. I mean, that's like, man, I hand it to you to be able to simply let go like that. You know, I don't want to say it too loud because God's going like, oh, okay, I guess we'll have to work on that next. You know.
I'm not afraid in the traditional ways. I'm really not. I would have to say my faith in the Almighty is real strong. And the reason for that is I have been given so many situations like the one just mentioned. I have been put through so much shit. And I have, my God, you know, I have somehow, time after time after time again, come out of it usually not the worse for wear, but much improved as a human being for the reflection it was capable of giving me, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so for myself, I don't really think anymore too much in terms of like, God, what am I going to do next week? How am I going to have the money for the rent? Is this going to happen? Is my car going to break? My mind just does not really spend any time there. My mind kind of goes, it's all taken care of. It's all in the hands of my guardian angel, and Lord, just teach me to walk in concert with your will. Teach me to be able to walk in such a way that I am completely like a synchronized swimmer with the invisible waves of your will within the ocean in which I am demonstrating.
Yeah,
or something to that effect.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. The idea being that you have to. It's kind of like, but you know. You hear from the more conservative fundamental types where you have to abuse yourself. You have to beat yourself down. You have to fight, you know, your ego, your all this stuff. And there's this negative slam. But on the other hand, you do need to let go of your will to harmonize. I use the term resonating with the reality. Reality is like is the mechanism to test if we're in resonance with it. If we're in resonance with the reality, and then you have the powers that be are creating a false reality and trying to get us to resonate with that. You know, that's kind of how I look at it. So rather than break your will, it's more like God wants you to volunteer to go along this path because he knows it's the best for you.
I think that there are a lot of misapprehensions out there about a lot of things, and I don't know if they are cultivated by the agents of darkness who work them through spiritual texts or whatever, but I'll tell you this right off the bat. I think this whole idea of killing the ego is stupid. You know, I think what you're supposed to do is refine the ego, improve it, learn to subject it, take control of it. When you have control of your ego, you can take it almost like a say a prism or something, and you can hold it up. You can control it so that you can turn it in such a way that it hits the light, and the light streams through the prism and comes out in all the manifest colors that make the manifest world. I think that you can hollow out the ego in a way, or the ego can become filled with the Holy Spirit. that expresses itself through that particular personality. There's a reason why we are all like snowflakes. We are all different personalities. They don't make two of us, okay? So my feeling is that the personality is there for a very important reason. So why not let the personality be like a stained glass window, okay, instead of a wall? Because in most cases with people, their ego is a wall, and it bumps and abuts and bangs into everybody else's ego in the pursuit of self-interest. But say you get rid of self-interest, then the ego itself could become like a stained glass window. The personality could be a stained glass window, and the light would shine through it and create this dramatic and beautiful effect. And that is what I personally am seeking after.
Yeah, because I mean, God is our creator. God knows what we would want to do best. And so it's not like God says, no, I know you want to do this, but I want to make you do that. I mean, that's satanic, right? That's the idea of being a slave. But God knows what you want to do, and okay, I got the answers. I'm going to let you, it's free will. You could walk the way you want to walk.
Exactly how it works. Exactly how it works. And what happens, it's like a mother and a child. She's out in the playground, okay? It's been raining the day before. There's a lot of unruly kids in the playground. She lets her kid run over to play with them. The kid winds up getting knocked down, smashed into the mud, and various things happen. The kid goes, but the mother's leaving him to experience what it is he was so insistent on experiencing. But finally, he's had enough of it, and he goes running back to his mother crying. And, of course, his mother embraces him and wipes the mud off of his face and cleans him up and takes her back into the aura of her protection. But if a child willfully seeks to remove themselves from the protection of the mother, or however they see it, or the father, and insists on going out into the world and forging their own way, then depending on their karma and depending on what talents and abilities they have and all the rest of the accoutrements that come along with what composes them, then whatever the breaks are, those are the breaks. But even then, at the end of the course with that, do you have a relationship with the divine? Have you made yourself become a friend of the divine as a result of the life you lived? Because if you have not, you've lost everything.
Well, I want to say now, I'm looking at the clock. We got about 5 minutes, but I can go longer. I don't know what your schedule is.
Sure, I'm fine.
Because I'm the last guy.
It's up to you.
I'm the last guy on TogiNet, and I can go all night if I want to. So, and I have my own system here. So
break the internet.
Yeah,
we'll break the internet.
I like that one page I saw where it says you have reached the end of the internet, and that's all it says. I thought that was pretty clever on it. So maybe we can get into stuff like I just got done saying that no one really knows what's coming, but through your writings and your works and so forth, you have been speaking, I think, in terms that would be more a clear overlay that kind of focus things, still not getting specifics, but still kind of making it more three-dimensional. It's kind of shaping. We're kind of seeing its shape. Don't know what it is yet, but it's shaping, and it seems very close. But you could talk to people like Harold Camping or I forgot her name from Seventh Day Adventist. You can go throughout history. Everyone's got a date and a time and a what and a where, and here we go. The Mayan calendar, all these people were talking about what was going to happen. But I can't help but see, as I go out and look into the system, where you have people becoming beyond descriptionally rich, it takes less people to make, like that one article you showed. It takes 64 people to have half the entire world's wealth.
80.
Well, it was 80, but now it's down to 60. I was reading the article. It was 80,
really?
and it was 80, and now it's down to 64. So, but on that article, somebody brought up a good point at the end. Where is like the Queen of England? She's got to be pretty rich.
Where's the Rothschilds?
Yeah, the Rothschilds. How come they're not in there?
There's the Schiffs and the Warburgs. Okay, they're not in there because they're up there in the control booth. Okay, that's why you never see them in Fortune 500.
Now, is it because in reality their actual, call it, worth isn't necessarily expressed totally in dollars as much as power?
Not certainly in the case of the Rothschilds. As far as the Queen of England goes, I don't really know. I heard their net worth was around $6 billion. I don't actually know. But that would still put her on the list somewhere, and it certainly would have put her on the list in the past. But they've got their own little rules about how they show this kind of thing, and these people, you know, they like to stay a bit in the background.
Well, is there something you would like to, you know, that you kind of popped in your head or your heart that you'd like to talk about in a minute here while I go back and play with the knobs?
I'll go ahead and go play with the knobs. Well, I'll tell you what. For me, once again, there's only one thing I really like to talk about, and that is the ineffable. And all of what the ineffable can do for anybody who wants to pursue the ineffable. And right off the bat, I can say that every religion provides narrow, slender little walkways that one can go through and eventually come out the other side and actually find what they're seeking, but I don't choose to do it that way. I have chosen to take my own path, which isn't charted and which sometimes can be more inconvenient and difficult than the paths that are laid out and set out for you. And I don't have the traditional Chela Guru relationship where I'm in a daily instructed mode. You know, with me, there's a lot of freelancing going on and searching to come into accord with the Almighty. And I believe that that should be the single focus of every human being. And every human being has to recognize they can't stay on it 24 hours a day, not until they're given this ability. We can only work within our limitations and what we have at our hands at the moment, hopefully and faithfully knowing that more will be added to us as we continue and show our sincerity in our effort to achieve this. Because I'm going to tell you something, I don't suffer fools gladly, but I tell you, God definitely does not suffer fools gladly. He does not suffer dilettantes and the disingenuous and the weekend warriors and all the people that come to him and go, oh, God, God, I want to know you. And next week they're off doing something else, because God will immediately take you up on it. And God will put you through the necessary steps as far as he's concerned, if she's concerned, to see what you do. And unfortunately, many are called, but few are chosen. Because very few actually stick there and maintain and continue. And then the rewards will come in. I'll tell you, for years, I banged at this door. I suffered every kind of indignity. All kinds of awful things happened to me. But I kept on, I kept on, and I kept on, and I never stopped. And the agent of the Almighty who speaks to me has often pointed that out to me in later times. But now, as I have reached a certain stage of my existence has gotten a lot easier. I have a lot more access to the inner realms of audio, you know, that I didn't have before. And I'm a lot happier. I'm smiling most of the time. Almost nothing bothers, troubles, or worries me. I'm in a really good place, I have to say. And this is all the result of just never stopping and never giving up. And I have to just tell people that this is what you got to do. And there's nothing else worth pursuing. Trust me, at the end of your life, or once you've left here, or you do wind up somewhere else, it will dawn on you in a big way if you haven't done it. So,
no, I definitely definitely appreciate that. It is, I'm feeling some of that joy in all of this. I still have to. That's why I really appreciated your column when you talked about the people who are suffering, because I just have a hard time. Because I was thinking about these people, and I understand the karma, I understand that, but here's what I think happened. I mean, I usually really use Jesus as an example. I mean, the man Jesus, what he did, you know, without getting all the theological stuff. And when people came to him and asked for healing, he healed them. Right? He didn't go like, well, let me check your karma. You know, let me check to see, well, you know, you got to suffer a little bit longer or whatever.
Their karma.
Yeah, I mean, and so I kind of looked like when you're in this life, in space and time with flesh on, you have a power of intervention that has a spot over, let's just call it the general karma. That you have the ability to help. Now, I can't go help a million people starving around the world, but I can help anybody. I can be in a situation in my life at any place in time and do my part. It may not be as dramatic as something like that, but and that's why I think if we all did our parts in there, that collective intervention, we are God with skin on in space and time. That's kind of how I am. Am I out over the top on that or no?
No, not at all. Look, you can put it another way. Everyone is doing God's will. Okay? Everyone, even the bad guys, the good guys, everyone is playing a role within this dynamic of existence. But it only dawns on those people seeking understanding what the actual meaning of what they're doing is. This is where you get things like, and then there's grace, like what happened to Paul on the road to Damascus, or some of the other places where God directly comes out of wherever God comes from and intrudes in existence. Am I at all in your ballpark here with what you asked me? Or,
yeah. I mean, I guess. I guess the point that it brings me the peace as well as the responsibility is that one time I just kind of frustration. I just blurted out to God, "All right, how do you get through? What do you do to get through life?" You know, I just kind of, in its desperation, and I got an answer. I mean, I didn't hear a voice, but I got an answer, and the answer was, in any given moment, do the right thing. I said, not to sound like Pilate.
Serve as you go.
Not to sound like Pilate, but what is the right thing? You know, and it says, do the best for the highest best good for all those involved, including yourself. Any given moment, do the best for all those involved in that moment, but don't forget yourself included. If you do that little thing step by step each time, you don't have to do any big things. It's just a flow. So I've always kind of said that to myself. When at any moment, okay, what do I do here? Okay, what's the highest best thing for all those involved? And I usually come up with some kind of a path.
Well, that's a form of enlightened self-interest, and I believe in that too. You know, once again, let's get back to that suffering thing a little bit.
Okay.
And talk about that. You know, if we got a heart, we're going to feel. Unless we're people who are so disenfranchised from our heart, we can't feel a damn thing unless it has to do with our own benefit. And
well, I mean, can I interject for 1 second about that benefit thing? What I have found in myself and some other people is that we tend to not take care of ourselves at the expense of others. Is what I'm saying. So I mean, it's like it's. I mean,
that makes no sense.
I mean, other people take care of themselves at the expense of others. Some people help other people at the expense of themselves, which is okay. But, you know, if I give my body to be burned, if you will, what good is it? There's got to be like a purpose to it. I mean, if somebody has to run out in front of a car and save a kid from being hit, that's that moment in time, fine. But there are people who will cause limitations and harm to their general plans in life, divine plans in life, at the behest or the whims of others. You know, it's kind of like you got to kind of find out where don't squander you, let's say, in part of doing the divine work. I hope I'm making sense.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying there, but that all relates to levels of awareness. What is our level of awareness? That determines what we are able to appreciate in terms of action and not acting. Because there are these amount of, what do you call them, bleeding heart sisters or things like that, who decry the ills of the world and run around throwing themselves upon the metal spikes and rails of existence's misfortune in order to demonstrate this. You know, then it comes down to motive again. What's really their motive? What's really driving them? And are they possibly even living the way they are living simply because in their last life, whoever it was they were or whatever they were doing, put them in a position where they had to be doing this now as an overcompensation for errors made in the past? A lot of what I see is people acting out in response to the mistakes they made back at a time where they can't remember. And since they can't remember, they're acting out unconsciously upon these mistakes and being driven by the passion end of the business, which means that they could, exaggerate the necessity for all kinds of things or exaggerate the fears of all kinds of things well and wildly beyond what is necessary. But that's part of the karma too.
Yeah, I guess the idea of, I think grace is the ultimate. And I think if you follow the grace path, whatever karma you have to work out will work out. I mean, it's almost like if you're trying to work out the karma you miss the grace. And if you just say, to hell with the karma, I'll go for the grace, you're missing it too. It's kind of like there's that intent thing there.
I've turned my karma over to the Almighty. It is the Almighty's job now to see how my karma is worked out or not worked out. Now, I've been told certain things about why I'm here and how I came to be here in the first place, and what my karma is, and what part of what seems to be my karma is actually choices I made in respect to the work I do. I'm not going to get into that, and it's something I never really am comfortable talking about because, first of all, I don't know, and second of all, it opens up the minds of other people to like needless speculation about things. And but all I can say, and I mean I have to say it over and over again, look, the air is filled with questions. We have questions rising in our minds all the time. Every day we come up against situations where we go, did I handle that correctly? Could I have done this another way? What should I have been doing instead of that? I mean, this is constantly going on. But the fact of the matter is you can't know any of these things. You have to leave it in the hands of the one who does know. The way I look at it is, if I know, God doesn't. If God knows, I don't. So I prefer God knowing and I don't. And I am informed when I need to be informed about what I need to be informed about. In the meantime, I'm going to do the best I can. This is all I'm capable of, to do the best I can. When I fall short and I make mistakes, I'm going to acknowledge and recognize those mistakes, and then I'm going to go right straight ahead. I'm going to forget totally about it the moment that that's taken care of, and I'm going to head straight on again. Possibly do some more mistakes. But
yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. I grew up in kind of a situation where the mistakes is what only was counted. And so
yeah.
I mean, I remember one time my mom was telling me that you can't get hurt by the nice things. It's always the bad things, so you got to focus on the bad things. And so I had to work, kind of dig my way out of that one, and it took a while. But I can understand why someone would do that, but it's the wrong approach. And if you have a partnership with God, in a positive sense, because a lot of people are taught to fear God. Don't tell God. You can't. He's got to hide it away from him. But it's like, that's funny. You're going to hide it away from God, who is in.
Okay, here we go.
Okay.
It says, fear is the beginning of wisdom. Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. That does not mean that it continues to express itself as fear. At a certain point, I consider myself a friend of the ineffable. A friend. It's a particular relationship that one can have with the Almighty. And you want to be a friend of the Almighty? Act like one. And so as far as I'm concerned, I consider myself a friend of the Almighty. There's no reason I should be in fear of the Almighty. I should be in fear of my own capacity to displease the Almighty. Yes.
Yeah, and I think that the way I look at the anatomy is that our connection within to God is along this communication path. And things like fear, greed, hate, and all this stuff are very disruptive. And things like love, while being powerful, are very subtle. So, it's like that one verse, what was it? Something like a still small voice. I went to seek the Lord, and he wasn't in the whirlwind, and so on. I had a still small voice and all that. So I think that's where the idea of meditation and being quiet, where, of course, you look out into the world and everything is loud and there's no quiet time. You got to constantly be working or playing or moving and what have you. That quiet time
Clamor
really...
and glamour. Clamor and glamour. Those are the two, yes.
Yeah.
And the glamour is not very glamorous as far as I'm concerned.
So on Hawaii, I've never been there.
Really?
No.
Well, I've invited you, so there's a bunk here. You can see it up, right up there.
Yeah.
I got mine there, and you got a bunk up there, and my kitchen is outside in another building like this. This is a hexagon or octagon of some kind, a strange, unusual structure.
No, I would like that. I appreciate that. I have to. When I get these things, I just say, okay, I'd like to do that. I mean, I've been to Gdansk in Denmark. What's the other? Warsaw. I was amazed at Gdansk when I was looking at the cathedrals. First time I saw a cathedral. I mean, I'm an American, right? We see big churches here. You see the cathedral. I'm looking at it. I was like, huh? I couldn't put it into words. And I'm in like a poor one. In Gdansk, they had several, but they were poor neighborhoods compared to one of the more elaborate in other parts of Europe. And it was like, Oh, my God, it took us 200 years to build them, too.
Oh, sure. And you know they cannot build them today now. They've forgotten how to do this.
Yeah.
They can no longer reproduce these things. I read quite an involved architectural article about it. You haven't been inside Notre Dame, have you?
No.
Oh, my God. You want to see a big cathedral in a Chartres, or some of these are just
The biggest one I've been in was in Mexico City. And that's the first one I've been. I guess it's probably bigger than the one in Gdansk, but I was there. It was probably too big. It was like being in a stadium. You can't really appreciate it if it's too big.
Right.
But I went to the front, and the entire front oval part, I guess they call it the font, I guess, the front of it, from floor to ceiling, completely covered in gold. Like I guess they paper it, like, so to speak, paper it over it or whatever. Completely gold. I'm looking at it going, oh, my God, I wonder how many slave Indians it took to build that. That's the first thing I thought of. But it still was amazing.
Sure.
So, I mean,
those things are built to the vanity of man, not the glory of God.
Well, right.
And that's why they need all those jewels and that gold. And it is impressive. I accept that. And if you look at the faith that can build that kind of thing, just imagine what the faith that can build other things, we really, God is limitless. God's power cannot be limited. And God is capable of anything. There is nothing you can imagine that God cannot accomplish. That's just like another metaphysical truth. So what does God do when God has jobs and things that need to be done here on this planet? Who are God's hands? We are, okay? God moves through the human being in expression of his will, his love, his joy, his abilities, whatever the case may be, for those who have put themselves in the way of this condition happening to them. And everything else is like, bad toreadors.
Yeah, well, I think that's if we can have a better view of God as being more of a friend. I mean, to me, I look at God as is like he's the judge and the defense attorney at the same time. Mm-hmm. He can discern, and he's in your best interest at the same time. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, go ahead.
The prosecuting attorney is Satan.
Right.
And who knows better everything you did wrong and all the mistakes you made? And meanwhile, that's the beauty of the Satanists, the ones who are running around worshiping it. I mean, meanwhile, he's documenting every single thing that they do. So when you come up towards the throne, there he shows up because he works for God.
One thing I did when I did a lot of studying was that when I started studying on the term Lucifer, I don't know, I've not read documents older than the Greek manuscripts of the New Testament. I mean, so I don't have a definitive answer on this, but it seems like in Jeremiah, the term lightbringer or bearer or what have you was describing the king. So was Lucifer, the idea of the Luciferian whole Greek word there was the tirade against the king. You have thought you've risen higher than the Lord. You think it's
the spirit of rebellion.
Yeah. So, but what I'm trying to say is when they translated into the English Bible, going to the Geneva Bible and then King James, the theology developed that they were talking about a being there. So they left in Lucifer because it was a name. But I think in reality, it was simply a descriptor. So all the Luciferians are actually dealing with something that never was intended or existed. Now, that doesn't mean Satan isn't, but that whole concept of the light bringer is really an idol as opposed to a real being.
Well, that's the case with so many things, that people are working under false assumptions about all kinds of things. And I look at these people like who, they talk about the Luciferians, the Illuminati, the Masons. They talk about the things that happens when you hit the 33rd degree and you find out that Satan's running everything, which, yeah, okay, all of these things may or may not be true, and all the people that are serving these things one way or another, it may or may not be true. There are people that insist I'm a Mason, that insist I'm a Luciferian. I mean, I don't know from yesterday morning or today. I have no idea what they're talking about, because I know myself and I know what I'm doing every single day, and it never involves any of those things. What the truth of these things are, this I do not know. But I know that God uses many angels, and some of them are in disguise. And even the devil is transformed into an angel of light at the given moment. Be not deceived, okay? And the same may be said of Lucifer or any of the rest of them. They are out there as icons and representatives to attract a certain area of humanity toward the fulfillment of certain experiences, events, and destinies. And in the end, we're all reabsorbed back into the Almighty again, because the Almighty makes up everything, and He's got His way of casting and choreographing the whole dream sequence we're involved in. I myself am not interested one way or another in Lucifer, Satan, or any of the rest of these, okay? I come up against them at certain times when I'm being taught certain things by my teacher, okay? But basically, all my attention is upon the ineffable and upon Lady Nature. Okay, and this is where I seek my recourses, and this is where I seek to be taught and educated and all the rest of it. And I don't even concern myself with any of the rest of that out there. I write about some of these things because hopefully they give me a vehicle to bring up the things I just said into them to diagram and express something else. A lot of the time when I'm talking about certain things, those are only blinds. They're vehicles to get to the point I'm trying to make.
That's true. When you can evoke some type of attention, you draw somebody into it. Now you have their attention, and you can bring out the. Now, of course, that's manipulative, but
yeah.
But it's also like there was one of the parables was that one of the guys who went out and did all these kind of dirty tricks to make before he got fired, and Jesus says, "Why don't you ought to learn from these guys? Be a little more clever, not necessarily evil. Be blind, wise as a serpent is as a dove, but you could use techniques." But I don't. There are people out there who trust in the techniques more than in what they're teaching, though. So that's where I guess where that line is crossed. I don't know.
Let's put it this way. I don't know if it was Paul who said it, but it was one of them, and he said it, and I have to paraphrase because I don't remember exactly how it goes. But he said, "To the fool I became as a fool. To the drunkard I became as a drunkard. To the thief I became as a thief. To all men I became as what they are in order to win them to Christ." And that is how I see the manipulation thing. I have seen some very skillful gurus at work in the way that they bring people around to particular understandings. And in my experience with the ineffable, he's not like some real benevolent guy in a white beard sitting up on a throne somewhere, and he's not some stern, glowering individual either, okay? He can be a trickster. He's very clever and ingenious. He knows where you're coming from way before you do. But he does all kinds of things that are totally incongruous with what you might expect from the divine. And you got to understand that some of his great followers, the people that love him probably more than you and I put together, are out there scooping human brains out of a skull in the graveyards in India, okay? Those are the Agora, or the people who walk on the left-hand side of God. They find God just as well. It is a huge dynamic when we look at it, okay? I mean, look at Rasputin, or look at all of these unusual individuals that came about that had these incredible abilities. Okay, did he get it from the devil or not? Well, the devil got it from God in the first place. So however you want to look at it. But, I mean, it's not just all like women in long dresses standing singing, "Faith of our fathers," this is so boring, It's not just all that, and it's not just like then the Muslims over here doing this, and then the Buddhists over here doing this. I mean, there's this huge spectacle and production, all the way to this end and all the way to that end, and like, God, yet, depending on their hearts and their attentions, people from every single one of those particular dramas are reaching the ineffable. They're getting there. Not according to our traditions, not according to our paths and ways, but, I mean, that's how incomprehensible, inexplicable, and inexpressible the divine is. You cannot figure out or comprehend it, and you never will.
I've come up with the look at it that God is infinite. All right, so I spent a lot of time pondering, what does that mean? And if you think of God has been here in infinity before you have, whose knowledge and breadth and abilities are infinitely better than you, greater than you are, but I have now started at some point in my life. I started in infinity of myself. That's like a ray. I'm going toward infinity, so I have an infinity to learn about God, but He's had an infinite head start. So I'm never going to finish, and that's a good thing. because you're going to get
Yes.
closer and closer. I mean, look at the idea of dividing a ruler, dividing the distance in half to the point, or look at the lowering of the temperature. You try to get to absolute zero. You can get closer, but you can't get there. The speed of light, you can't get past it. These are all aspects of infinity that the good news is the journey will never end. And if you can look at it as a journey, a positive journey, which has its, let's call it thrills or dangers. So that's kind of how I kind of look
Thrills
at
and spills.
it.
Yeah. Well, to put it simply, God was one and indivisible at one point. And pretty much all of the traditions say this in one way or another. So what happened then was God broke himself into millions and millions of pieces. Okay? He literally expanded, much as the universe did, into every living thing and every inanimate thing, and all of these things were all part of him. And then he spent the rest of creation moving toward the night of Brahma, or whatever it's called, picking up one piece after the other and putting them all back together until he is completely whole again. And this is what he does. Now, some pieces have been put back into the Almighty back well before any recorded history we know about. And a whole bunch of other pieces have yet to be put back in. But this is what is going on. That's what creation is all about. God seeking and rediscovering himself in those who are asleep and who have forgotten their divine nature.
And I learned something from Satanists that their thought, at least this group that I was reading on, their thought is that statement means that if you can take those pieces and group them together for the negative, let's say, that eventually, if enough pieces come, you can actually win God over to God could be negative. The negative can control it.
A better way to put it is that somebody's got to be God's butt hairs.
Yeah, I mean,
somebody's got to be God's.
And this is where I think the free will comes in. There is that you're allowed to choose to be the bad guy, and God says, "Fine, I'm gonna use you in this plan, and your choice. You can either be used as good guy, bad guy, but I'm going to use you in your badness to still push people toward the goodness. So it's up to you.
My glory. Yes, absolutely.
So let me. I think we're gonna wind up here in a couple of minutes. So let me. What's in your? Do you see anything in your future? Got plans, books, music, band?
Well, I've got to stop smoking. I smoke very little now, but I can see where it's affecting my ability to speak and to sing. So once I've taken care of that, yes, I am working out on my guitar each day and getting my side. I stopped playing for 7 years, so I'm getting that back together. I'm about to do some recording. I'm making audio books out of the books I've already published, and I'm going to release those. And other than that, I'm doing a lot of vigorous physical working out every other day, and I'm bringing myself into a certain level of physical, optimization. That's my effort at this time. I'm seeking the Almighty, and I will seek with ever greater intensity the more that I'm allowed to possess that intensity. As far as any products or works that I do, those things will just come out of that whole thing.
I have my mind off. I will say that God gave me a very good present last year, and you're probably the only person I could tell this to who might understand, is since I was a kid, I love Godzilla movies, and I've always had a view of what Godzilla should be, and I was always getting made fun of because Godzilla would start doing karate chops or dance around or some silliness, right? So I went and saw that Godzilla movie that came out, and I had a list of things that I wanted in it, verbatim. It was perfect. I wept. I just wept. I was so happy when I saw that movie because it was like, that is Godzilla. And I kind of laughed, and I went, how did he know exactly what was in my mind? I mean, actual scenes. And I thought, you know what? That was like a present from God for me.
I have had experiences like that. I know what you're talking about. I mean, and they actually happen more often than they ever have had before. I go, does he know? I mean, and yeah, I guess so.
Now, I can't vouch for the next one, but that one, I will cherish that probably. To me, it's like, That's a love letter from God. How's it? Godzilla, a love letter from God. Anyway, it's been fun talking to you, Les. We could do this more often. We have a better time frame. Excellent video and internet, so it works out nice on the visual side. And when you're up to it, maybe we could even get you to do a tune. So I appreciate you taking this time.
Yeah, that's coming up. Maybe the next time or the time after, I'll be in a better place to just sit down and like tunes, run out a couple of things or one.
And I love that you do the audio commentary. I'll tell you right now, it's the most downloaded thing on my server. It's more than my show, and I'm happy that you're doing it. So God bless, and we'll talk to you again.
Well, thank you, and it wouldn't happen without you. So let's point that out. God bless you, James, and thank you all who turned in to listen, or in this case, to watch. God bless you all.
Less visible. Alrighty. We'll be back next week, if there is one. Reach for the skies within.